This is CBC Here and Now.
Tonight, court documents reveal past safety concerns at the Come-By-Chance Refinery. What we know about a criminal investigation into the fatal explosion.
It sort of puts a cloud over it. I mean, with the postponement of the Equinor's Beta Nord project and now with BP walking away, makes you think twice as to what the long-term future is.
Some recent setbacks in the local oil industry, but now ExxonMobil is drilling deep beneath the seabed, hoping to make the next major discovery in the offshore.
Contract offer. Nurses say after weeks of intense negotiations, their members now have something to vote on.
Yes, we're still in crisis, but there is hope.
Coming up on Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. We have new details tonight from CBC Investigates on the investigation into last year's fatal flash fire at the refinery in Come-By-Chance. CBC News went to court to get the RCMP's search warrant documents made public. Well, today a judge ordered them to be partially unsealed. As Rob Antle reports, it's shedding some light on a police probe into possible criminal negligence.
Dramatic scenes as helicopters land on a Clarenville grocery store parking lot near the local hospital, loading workers who were hurt hours earlier in an explosion at the Come-By-Chance refinery, bound for the Health Sciences Centre in St. John's. One person died, 7 others seriously injured. Provincial occupational health and safety officials and the RCMP began to investigate what happened. Initially, the Mounties concluded the explosion wasn't a criminal matter, but months later, something changed.
In January, the RCMP reviewed information gathered by occupational health and safety officials. That's when the investigation became criminal, for possible charges of criminal negligence causing death and criminal negligence causing bodily harm.
It's not clear why police made that decision, much of it blacked out. Also under wraps, exactly who the subject of the investigation is and what the Mounties were searching for at the refinery site when they went there in early March. But there are details revealed about the explosion's aftermath. One witness said they heard a boom, then instantly saw a flame rolling across the ground and heard people screaming and asking for help. Another witness said they went down to the explosion site and it looked like a war zone. The RCMP court filings also reference apparent concerns about safety. From one victim's interview summary, "We need to slow down, they're pushing us and someone is going to get hurt." And a witness told investigators there are shortcuts made to save money, and the direction comes from one person. After the RCMP executed the search warrants in March, Brea said worker safety is top priority and stressed that the company had developed a thorough, safe return-to-work plan for employees. "We are committed to our safety culture and have an open-door policy to ensure a safe workplace for all." Late this afternoon, the company said it didn't have anything further to add. Meanwhile, there was no update from the RCMP on the status of its investigation. Rob Antle, CBC News, St. John's.
The province's precarious oil industry is going through another series of ups and downs. While one major prospect is being abandoned, plans are underway to drill another. Here and Now's Terry Roberts reports.
This is a familiar site near Bay Bulls, an oil exploration platform anchored outside the harbour, taking on supplies and undergoing inspections before heading offshore to drill deep into the seabed. This is the Hercules semi-submersible, under contract to ExxonMobil and Qatar Energy. It will soon be making its way to an area north of the Jeanne d'Arc Basin, not far from the province's 4 legacy oil fields. The Hercules will drill a prospect called Gale, hoping for the next big discovery and potentially a producing field.
Let's keep our fingers crossed because we do need some good news. It's encouraging. I mean, one would have thought that the Jeanne d'Arc Basin had pretty well had found all the elephants as such, and the only potential would be for subsea.
For people like Rob Strong, it's a sign of hope following a series of recent setbacks. First, Equinor announced it was delaying a decision on its massive Beta Nord project for up to 3 years. And last month, British oil giant BP announced it was abandoning the Ephesus exploration well in the Orphan Basin. There was global hype in oil industry circles over the Ephesus prospect.
Makes you think twice as to what the long-term future is.
BP's decision to abandon the Ephesus well was welcomed by environmental groups.
Well, I think if we look at the larger scope of whether or not we should be exploring for more oil at all, given our climate targets, exploring for any amount of oil beyond what we already know exists doesn't make any sense.
But ExxonMobil is pressing ahead, and it's doing so with a big injection of cash from the provincial government, which is trying to encourage more exploration. The company will be reimbursed up to $50 million for the cost of drilling the well. That money comes from exploration deposits that have been forfeited by oil companies. It's the second time ExxonMobil, which recorded record profits last year of $55 billion, has benefited from the program. A few years ago, the company received $30 million to help cover the cost of a different well. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, the Nurses Union hopes a new contract offer will help to recruit and retain more nurses, and the province hopes that will mean improved access to medical care. Here in Now's Mark Quinn reports.
We cannot afford to lose one more registered nurse or nurse practitioner out of the system.
The Nurses Union says the stakes are high and negotiations with the province have been intense.
Left the table at 4:30 a.m. on Friday morning, and we were back at the table again at 12 noon and kept going until we got a tentative agreement later on Friday night.
Coffey says union polling found that pay was the number one issue for its members. Nurses were calling for increases that would bring their pay equal to what their counterparts are paid across Atlantic Canada.
We are the largest healthcare workforce in the province. And with 750 vacancies, we're seeing the use of private agency nurses, which has put millions upon millions of dollars coming out of our public healthcare system. We also have mandatory overtime. We have 24-hour shifts still happening, and something needed to be done to signal to our members, you are valued and respected. We're listening. We know that you need to be competitive, and we believe as a team that this contract does that.
Coffey won't discuss details until union members have voted on the offer, but she said the union has negotiated increases that are greater than what other unionized public employees received recently. Earlier this year, Public Service Alliance of Canada members voted to accept wage increases totaling 12.6% over the life of their 4-year contract.
We did negotiate a contract that makes us competitive with our Atlantic counterparts.
It will help stabilize the healthcare system.
The ongoing nurse shortage has forced the province to rely on more expensive agency travel nurses to provide health care. Osborne is hopeful this offer will change that.
The competitive wages, the fact that we'll be able to retain and recruit registered nurses more easily as a result of these negotiations will help us to staff up in terms of registered nurses, and we will have less reliance on agency nurses.
The union will soon meet with members to discuss details and vote on the contract offer. Coffey says ratification could happen within a couple of weeks. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, a tour boat helped out in the rescue of a humpback whale and her calf in Witless Bay last week. Joe O'Brien with O'Brien's Boat Tours spotted the two whales tangled in hundreds of feet of fishing gear. And that's when he called Julie Huntington with the Whale Release and Strandings Group. They spoke with the CBC Radio's The Broadcast.
The story started for us on Thursday when we got a call from Joe saying that there was a whale entangled, and then we prepared to go out to disentangle it. And we went out with fisheries officers and crew. They were our standby vessel, and Joe came as well looking for the whale. On Thursday we were not able to re-find the whale in the Witless Bay area, and then all we could do is wait until it was recited again. It was recited by gatheralls, and then Joe called us again, and then we prepared to go out, and Joe was our standby vessel. It was a humpback whale, mother and calf.
Their boat looked like half the size of the calf, and the whale looked 3 times the size of my 25-foot aluminum speedboat. So it was a rather large whale. It was 80,000 pounds. It was a big whale.
and we had to cut them and unwrap them from themselves, and then assess the situation again and move forward and do some further cutting, because the rope was in through the whale's mouth and we couldn't get right up to the whale's mouth, but we got right up on the next to the whale's body, and were able to cut most of the gear off the whale.
Definitely an incredible story there. Now we'll turn our attention to the weather, which has been very wet across a good chunk of the island, thanks to an area of low pressure. A couple of fronts associated with that as well, but we have lots of sunshine up across Labrador and lots of heat as well. Take a look at these temperatures. You can see the warm temperatures moving in, but they are well into the 20s, 28 degrees in Lab City this afternoon, 28 in Churchill Falls as well. Now across the island, we're looking at temperatures generally in the 20s. The humidex really is the story, but as we head through the next couple of days, it is going to be unsettled across the island, but lots of heat will linger up across the Big Land. Takes us into Wednesday. Cooler across the island, for parts of the island anyway. And then as we head into Thursday, Friday, and even into Saturday, we're looking at those mild temperatures across Labrador. This is when we'll start to see some of that heat move back in across the island as well. It will be accompanied by lots of humidity, and that will linger as we head into the end of the weekend. I'll break the full forecast down for you when I come back.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, Randy Spracklin and his Rock Solid Builds crew are known for taking the old and making it new. One of their latest projects took them to the Academy Hall in Brigus, a beloved community space that previously fell into disrepair. Now, the CBC's Jessica Singer got to tour the newly renovated space with Spracklin, and they also practiced their best reality TV reveal faces.
Give us a tour of this beautiful building.
Yeah, sure. This is like 2 sitting areas, and them pews came from the original hall. We just painted them up, made them look good. Same thing with the crates. They're like old fishing crates. And then we had this beautiful feature wall. A lot of memorabilia onto it. Like that coat is a bear coat, and it was on the Morrissey. So the Morrissey was Bob Bartlett, so his uncle used to own that coat and stale on it. All of it really got some kind of meaning to it. Like the Vindicator was an old newspaper press back in the 1800s that Brigus had here. And actually the name of the place is Vindicator Press. So it does 2 things, because we're going to be roasting coffee, but it also does with the newspapers.
So this is the piano.
This is
and
the music
everything
wall.
you're talking about.
So we got the violin, the accordion, guitars, mandolin, spoons, and we'll keep adding to it. So this is a place where you're able to come down and sit down if you strum a tune or play a tune, and sit down and enjoy the fire.
Beautiful. And yeah, tell us about this wall and the books that you have here. You were talking about it earlier.
Yeah, this feature wall. So we put in a wood burning fireplace, and then we build everything around it. And them old books, we found that in an old house as well, and they came from the 1800s and up. So we got an old book there, like a Newfoundland census from 1891. Very rare books, and you're able to come, we'll give you one, you can sit down, read it, and then we'll throw it back up. This is a brand new feature. It used to be a window behind that wall, so we took it out, and we wanted something to really be a focal point in this room. So, you know, a wood burning fireplace is going to smell good outside when you can smell that smoke going around, and sitting next to it, just to hear the crackling of the wood. Can't beat it. Sit down there for a cup of coffee or, you know, fresh blueberry scone. So we wanted to create a space. Like I said, this hall was used for events when it was running, so we wanted to create tables, and them tables are actually built in our wood shop. So our team built them. They're made out of spruce, local trees that were cut here right in Newfoundland, and we kind of shaped them up. We wanted something long because we wanted that when you're actually gathering your family and sitting down for a feast, everybody's together. And even though you mightn't know anybody that's sitting down, we wanted that long table feel where you're meeting new people, you're talking to old friends, and yeah, you're just having the time.
So you've done so many projects before, as we've seen on TV already. How does this fare in terms of difficulty or meaning, like how meaningful it is to you in comparison to the other projects that you've done?
Well, every project that we did had some kind of meaning and kind of touched us in certain ways because we love what we love doing, but this project is extra special. Everybody on our team did something here, is a kind of hanging a picture on the wall, by taking down the rugs, by building the fireplace, by installing the books. Everybody had their hands into it, and to know that As you see, we're all gathered around having a chat. That kind of means that extra little bit.
Well, that project will be featured on the upcoming season of Rock Solid Builds on HGTV. Well, another kind of project to tell you about now is St. John's artist has designed a new comic book all about tennis, a Colombian drug cartel, and some globe-trotting mayhem. Paul Tucker has released a new graphic novel called Stringer, and Tucker was in studio to talk about the book with The Signal's Adam Walsh.
Tell us what's sitting there in front of you with, I'm looking at this as Stringer, and it's a really nice cover.
Yeah, this is my new baby. It's a graphic novel, a hardback, 176 pages of blood, sweat, and tears and ink. And yeah, it's a crime thriller, as it says on the cover. However, it's also pretty funny.
Tell us a bit more about the storyline, because it's about a tennis racket stringer, right?
Yeah, I'm interested in like these interesting jobs that people don't think about. So it was an idea that I actually pitched to the writer, Patrick Kinlan. He and I have collaborated on a few things. And yeah, I'm a huge tennis fan, so I was looking for an angle. Not many people think about this as a job, but it has been a job, and it really kind of rose to more prominence in the time period when this book is set in 1983. So we follow Tim, the racket stringer, and he is also kind of dealing a little bit of party drugs on the side. This is a looser time in air travel, and he kind of just uses his position on the tour to just, be the fun guy. Everyone kind of loves him, and everyone kind of probably also hates him for some reason, but he's one of those guys that can get away with anything. He kind of falls on the radar of a cartel, a Colombian cartel, who sees what he's doing and wants to, exploit that. So now he's ended up with a much larger quantity of drugs that he's not comfortable with. And we follow him as we follow the tennis circuit. So that's the main thrust of the book. We're following him on the tour as he is trying to not die.
So then if we were to go into the Signal time machine here, and you were to go back and talk to yourself, young 11, 12, 13-year-old Paul Tucker, and be like, look what I have here. This is what you grew up to do with the same folks who made the other comic you're holding, Spawn, or whatever it also would be back then. How much would that blow your mind?
Yeah, I think it'd be a mixture of that's amazing, and also it took that long. I mean, I've been published many times by other fabulous publishers, but yeah, definitely a journey. It's definitely something that I can kind of breathe easier now that I've landed there with a book. And yeah, I think I'd be totally stoked to know. Yeah.
What happens now? So the book is out. You do things like come on here and talk with me. But outside of this, what else do you have to do for when something like that lands?
I don't know if you're teeing me up to talk about the book launch, which is tonight.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So I really wanted to take the time and celebrate this book. So we have myself and Wallace Ryan, who is the third name you'll see on the cover. We will be at Bannerman Brewing tonight from 7 to 9. And we'll be signing copies of the book, selling books. We really wanted to take the time and celebrate the release because, so much goes into it. Wallace and I have been getting together and in his studio or my studio and, keeping ourselves excited and keeping the momentum going all throughout the production of this thing. So it's going to be fun to actually mingle with real life other people. And our writer will be joining us as well virtually. He's in Australia, so It wasn't really an easy trip for him.
Congratulations on this.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Most of the heavy rain has now moved offshore. Still going to be unsettled over the next couple of days across parts of the province. I'll have all the details coming up.
We were just chatting about that rainfall this morning. My goodness, it was such a surprise when I got up, and it was like, we're saying that it felt like just all the moisture in the air just all dropped at once.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of heavy rain out there. I think we recorded about 40 millimeters in the metro area. I know areas on the west coast saw significant rainfall as well. Port aux Basques saw some heavy rainfall too. So lots of moisture out there in the atmosphere. Temperatures today, humid.
Very.
Very humid. Let's take a look at where we sat as far as the thermometer was concerned. Only 22 degrees in St. John, so cooler than yesterday, but that humidex was more like 29 this afternoon. You take a look at those temperatures. Cooler along the south coast, as has been the rule for the last week or so. Well, really more than that since we've been in this southerly flow. And then the warm spot was in Lab City today at 28 degrees. Same thing for Churchill Falls, but you head towards the coast and temperatures are a tad cooler. Cartwright reaching a high near 11 degrees today. So taking a look at the humidex, feeling more like 28 at the moment in St. John's. Lots of areas for central, west coast. Deer Lake feeling like 33. So definitely humid. Up across Labrador, not so much, especially towards the coast, but it's feeling more like 31 in Churchill Falls at the moment. So it is going to be a tad humid again as we head through tomorrow. And the reason for that is the dew point temperature. So we are going to dry out towards the coast, really all along the northeast coast. You're not going to see that much in the way of humidity, especially towards the west coast of the island as well. That will feel fairly pleasant actually, but we will still hang on to that humidity essentially for eastern areas, particularly in St. John's. It will feel very humid again tomorrow. And then as we look towards Thursday and even into Friday, we're going to see that continue. Areas through central actually may even dry out a little bit. It'll feel fairly comfortable. Up across Labrador, you start to get back into that humidity, especially with some fairly high temperatures. So humidex values expected to be well into the 30s. And then that's the story through Saturday. You start to feel that humidity creep right back in across the island as well. But really starting to feel humid as we head into Sunday. And this will be also when we see some of the milder air move in as well. So the reason why we've got that drier air is in behind this cold front. That is bringing some of the drier air in, but lots of rain associated with this one as well, pulling all of that moisture in. We were talking about that moisture in the atmosphere. Just wanted to show you. So the blues is where it's generally drier, but when you start to get into the oranges, it's really lots of moisture. So this is basically measuring the amount of moisture in the column of air. So the higher these numbers, the heavier the rain potential. And that's certainly what we saw through the night. But as we head through the next couple of days, the majority of that moisture is going to move offshore. And any showers that we do see will not be anywhere near as heavy as they have been. And that will really be in the story even as we head into Friday. Some drier air certainly moving in. We didn't have radar for most of the day today, but it did come back online just in time for the heaviest showers to move offshore. But in behind that, you can see there's not a whole lot to talk about tonight. We are looking at actually skies clearing for parts of the west coast. But we will see periods of rain move right back in for eastern Newfoundland as we head through the night tonight. So expect, somewhere between 15, maybe 20 more millimeters, and some of the heaviest showers falling again through the overnight. Otherwise, showers, fog moving back inland along the south coast, and the chance of some showers for southeastern portions of Labrador. Temperatures tonight will stay in the teens, generally light winds. Coolest will be towards coastal areas of Labrador and the northern peninsula, where you will sit in the single digits overnight tonight. And then as we head into tomorrow, this is the start of an unsettled pattern. Isn't going to be a washout, but you're still looking at the chance of some cloud cover, even the chance of some drizzle. But as we get into the afternoon hours, it does look like areas across eastern Newfoundland will see some sunshine, and that will allow the temperatures to climb up. Labrador, most of you will see sunshine tomorrow, except the coast, where you will see that fog lingering. And then again, as we head through the overnight periods, expect some periods of rain through portions of central. Temperatures tomorrow will generally be around 18 to 20 degrees. I have 24 in St. John's, and that's because if the sun comes out, we should see, and we may even get a degree warmer than that. But the winds will shift from southwest to westerlies. Overall unsettled day. Up across Labrador, though, beautiful. 29 degrees in Lab City. You'll still feel that humidity. It'll feel more like the low 30s. So let's look at your forecast. We'll look ahead to the long range when I come back.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, the cost of electricity has gone up for most people in the province. Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro increased its rates on Saturday by more than 6%. Now, we also recently found out there's been another increase in the total cost of the Muskrat Falls Hydro project, but that's not what drove up power bills. Here's what Hydro CEO Jennifer Williams said to reporters last week about the change.
You provided an update on the cost of Muskrat Falls. Can you explain why it's gone up?
So the Muskrat Falls project total cost is $13.5 billion. The difference from the update last year is $133 million, 113 of which is basically the financial carrying costs that would have been incurred whether it was commissioned or not. So there's an amount of $20 million, which would be, I'll call it the final conclusionary bits from an actual investment perspective. So that would be the, I guess, where we landed at the end of the day. So no more cost updates for the project. It's done.
Rates are going to go up on July 1st. Probably a lot of people wondering why. Can you explain that?
Sure. So the rate change that is in effect as of July 1st is really components of historical costs that are not related to the project that have to go into rate changes for July 1st. Last year, folks remember, there was no change in rates at that time. But there was still some costs that come into the operating of a system. And what we have had historically is basically a once a year change that allows for, as costs ebb and flow through the course of a year, instead of having ups and downs in rates, we do it once a year. So what we're having here now is really a catch-up on costs that we've been incurring, but not actually collecting in rates. So that's what's happening on July 1st.
What will that look like for ratepayers?
It's about a 6.7% rate change on July 1st for residential interconnected customers.
We want students to pay the same amount for the co-op program, and we want them to be paid fairly for an hourly wage. If they're working hours, if they're working 40 hours a week, they should be paid for 40 hours a week.
Hundreds of engineering undergrads are calling on MUN to change the work placement program so students are paid minimum wage and fees are the same for international and local students. We'll hear from the student union on that coming up. seeing a child's first steps are precious for any parent. Outside Sheshatshiu Innu First Nation, 70 people got to witness one boy's first steps. CBC's Heidi Adder has more on how this may also be the first step to bringing back a lost tradition.
In an Innu tent outside Sheshatshiu Innu First Nation, about 70 people gathered at Mary Janet Hill's cabin to see Megan Rich's young son Daniel take his first steps outside. It's a tradition from Daniel's father's family, who are Mistissini Cree.
They have a tradition, a very, very old tradition that all kids do in that region, where they participate in a ceremony called the walking out ceremony. It's a rite of passage.
The Cree ceremony marks a child's first interaction with nature, the first time a child's feet are allowed to touch the ground, and begins all the lessons they will learn in their lives. Daniel's clothing was made by an elder in Sheshatshiu. He was dressed in the tent, then the ceremony began.
He has to pretend that he's shooting the goose, right? So my brother helped him get his little gun out of the bag, and they shot the goose. He killed it. And so they went around and picked it up. And then my boy, he took the goose and brought it inside the tent, where he was greeted by elders and kissed by the elders. And to see him walking out on his own was like he was no longer a baby. He was growing up.
Rich says as far as she knows, there's no similar ceremonies in Innu culture.
I really admired that the Cree Nation had traditions as strong as that one.
It's quite a transition.
Peter Panashaway says Innu did have a similar tradition, but it's been almost lost to trauma and settlement. Panashaway was raised for much of his childhood on the land by his grandfather. They were camped with his great aunts and uncles one day when excitement filled the camp about his young cousin David Panashaway.
They had dressed up David in Innu traditional clothes, and I remember his grandmother, Naisha, being very excited about the whole event. You know, they all were, right? And as the sun rose, they took him out into the world, shall we say.
Young David Panashaway even had a similar hat, a similar toy gun, and snowshoes made specifically for his first steps outdoors in the November weather.
And would have been the last ones to have performed that ceremony. And so when I saw it again with Megan's walking out ceremony, it was very, very special. But it reminded me of that what took place back in, I guess this would have been in the 70s, when this took place.
Panashaway says there's many similarities between Innu and Cree. Right now, Sheshatshiu Innu First Nation is struggling with the trauma of nomadic people being forced into communities. Panashaway says calling back to those old traditions, strengthening the language, and improving education could help with those struggles.
Having that ceremony and everyone's watching it on Facebook reminds everybody that, hey, this is important, and our children are important, and our grandchildren are important, and we need to bring that back. We need to make sure that we look after our kids. And so I think that was the message, and I think it was very powerful.
Megan says Daniel has been tough to keep up with. Since his feet aren't just touching the ground, he's now running around, but hopes this is just the first of many traditions he'll be a part of. Heidi Adder, CBC News, Sheshatshiu Innu First Nation.
About 800 undergraduate engineering students at MUN have signed a petition calling for changes to the work placement program. It's a program they say is unjust and can cause harm to the well-being of some students. Joining me now to talk more about this is Nicholas Keogh with Munsu and Jawad Chowdhury. So Nicholas, let's start with you. Can you talk about this petition? What's in it? What is it asking for?
Yeah, so our first ask was basically that we want international students to only pay $600, which is the same as local students. So right now they're faced with a differential fee, which they have to pay almost twice as much as local students for the exact same experience. And we don't think that's fair. We think international students do already have trouble with the skyrocketing tuition hikes, with fees, with extra fees that they have to pay just because of their place of origin. We think that that is extremely unfair, and it doesn't help students get through the program. As well as that, we also have a lot of students that have to do unpaid work or almost unpaid work, low wage, less than minimum wage work for a $2,500 stipend sometimes. That is completely unfair because everybody deserves a minimum wage job. If they're working 40 hours a week, they deserve to be paid for 40 hours a week and not just a stipend.
Tell us more about what students are going through. What kind of stories are you hearing from them? What are they saying to you about how they're feeling about these work placements?
Yeah, so especially international students are finding it really hard sometimes to secure positions. A lot of positions only are available for Canadian citizens, which is a requirement that is, very frustrating, but it comes from funding requirements. And so we find there's a lot of international students that struggle already to find a work term, and they have to pay more for the process of finding a work term. And paying double, especially when they already pay 3 times for the same tuition or 3 times the tuition for the same program is just extremely unacceptable. We also find some students are faced with $2,500 stipend work terms, which they can't pay rent with that money, and they have to pay the next tuition, the next semester's tuition, 8 months rent.
So there's a big difference between what an international student has to pay compared to a local student.
Absolutely.
And so, Jawad, can you tell us about the experiences of some other students at MUN? Because it's not just engineering students that have been facing kind of these challenges, these expenses. Can you talk about some of the other students as well?
Absolutely. With the revised tuition fee structure and the cost of living going up so much, students are struggling across the board. Engineering students, specifically, if you look at previous reports, when everything went online, we went to work from home. There was a report that said engineering students spend somewhere between 45 to around about 80 hours a week working on their studies, working on their co-op program. I think that's, quite mentally draining. And then you look at some other faculties like nursing or social work. Social work students have to go through 700 hours of unpaid work. Nursing students have to go through 140 something hours of unpaid work. And I think, that's something extremely unfair. Students that are investing most of their time studying or putting their time in for work term placements, they need means to leave, but not paying the students. What we're doing is we're essentially trapping the future generation of this province. These students are, they're already so much in debt. They cannot, once they graduate, they cannot make those big purchases. They cannot go buy a house, go buy a car. It's overall bad for the economy here. We're also losing students from this province. And so when you look at overall, population retention of the province, I think it's extremely crucial that we start paying students from now and pay them fairly.
So what's the big ask here? What do you want the university to change?
We want to change the co-op program. We want students to pay the same amount for the co-op program, and we want them to be paid fairly for an hourly wage. If they're working 40 hours a week, they should be paid for 40 hours a week.
What happens next with this?
I think given the recent incidences where there's a distance between the university leadership and students' body, I think this is the perfect opportunity to treat students fairly and be accountable to what the university leadership is promising. And so the President Bose promised us that this petition would go to his advisory committee, and then we would hear back from them as to what decisions they take. But as far as procedures go, once it goes to the Presidential Advisory Committee, then goes to the Board of Regents, and then the Senate for approval. And we're seeking everyone's support for this.
Well, Nicholas Keogh, Jawad Chowdhury, thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Find out more about an unconventional venue in Halifax that's giving musicians a space to play. That's coming up. Well, the unusual venue for a live music event in Halifax is celebrating 2 years of hosting its open mic night. No one was sure how it would go when it started, but the event has become a popular one in the city. As Gareth Hampshire explains, that's in spite of its ominous setting.
This is one of Carrie Matheson's favorite open mic venues to play her indie folk songs.
People gather here and come to actually listen to you, and not whereas a bar, people just come in for a drink and your background music, so it's kind of nice.
It's taking place here at a funeral home where it has been running for 2 years.
It is our second birthday tonight.
Even the host of Crookshanks Unplugged did not know what to make of the idea when he was first approached.
A little different from what they're normally used to going to play in, but the community, there's fantastic musicianship, and there's a never-ending rotation of amazing musicians that have come through.
So many musicians want to take the stage that he now has to limit them to one song each. And there's a loyal following at every show.
It's a way to be able to use the funeral parlor in another way altogether, so I think it's a great idea. And anywhere you can make music, I'm okay with it.
This is billed as the only open mic at a funeral home in the world, and it's become so popular there are as many as 30 performers in each event.
Like a dog in a ditch. Like a dog in a ditch.
My world has gone flat, so is my chest. Save your pity, honey, I shag the best in the West, 'cause I'm a crash test granny. I wear Clark's comfy shoes.
I had a feeling it was going to be really, really special, but I truly didn't know. And it grew legs of its own, and it's really, it's just come alive.
It was the acoustics of the room that Crookshanks family service counsellor Caroline McQuillan thought would work well. She was missing the open mic scene as a performer herself during the COVID lockdown. Hosting live music in the chapel where funeral services are held also makes for a nice change.
Our day is filled with a lot of grief and a lot of sadness. To be able to have something completely different here, where there is joy, there is laughter, there's resounding applause, it just kind of turns that all around and gives us a bit of a mental break.
The event was recently featured in American Funeral Director magazine and has even inspired a play called Open Casket, Open Mic. Gareth Hampshire, CBC News, Halifax.
There has been another mass shooting in the U.S. as the country marks its 4th of July holiday. 5 people were killed and 2 wounded in a series of apparently random attacks in Philadelphia yesterday evening. A man in his 40s is in custody.
This male was wearing a bulletproof vest with multiple magazines in the vest. He also had a scanner and an AR-style rifle and a handgun.
The shooter fired dozens of rounds over an 8-block area. All of the victims are male. The 5 who were killed ranged in age from 20 to 59 years old. The 2 wounded are aged 2 and 13. Also yesterday, 3 people were killed and 8 wounded in a mass shooting in Fort Worth, Texas. And on Sunday, 2 were killed and 28 wounded in an attack in Baltimore. A plan to release radioactive wastewater from the damaged Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan has been endorsed by the UN nuclear watchdog. The International Atomic Energy Agency says the plan has been proven to work and is in use elsewhere.
The water dispersion is one that is currently in use in many countries, including China, in Korea, in the United States, in France.
The Fukushima nuclear plant was destroyed in a massive earthquake and tsunami on May 11, 2011. Since then, the wastewater has been stored in hundreds of tanks on the site. Now, those tanks are expected to reach their capacity next year. The wastewater will be filtered and diluted with seawater before it's released into the ocean about a kilometer offshore. The process is expected to take decades and will be monitored by the IAEA. Here's a strange one. A small town in Saskatchewan may have made history last weekend with a prehistoric party.
And it's a
Yes, the town of Dundurn is looking to beat the Guinness World Record for the most people in inflatable dinosaur costumes. The community is home to 600 people and they hope to have about 400 attend, but the turnout was dynamite. They got more than 1,100 participants. That's triple the previous record. Organizers carefully recorded all of the T-Rexes and other dinos, and now they'll submit the information to the Guinness Book of World Records. They are confident, though, that no one will triceratop this. Ba-dum-bum. I mean, who thinks that up? Like,
I know. Also, like, some of the world records are just incredible to me. But yeah, let's have 1,100 dinosaurs.
People just dressed up in inflatable dinosaurs. Let's see how many we can get together. And 1,100 people, that's a lot.
That's impressive, yeah.
Yes, okay. Well, moving on. Long range forecast. Some more wet weather on the way, I understand.
Yeah, it's going to be unsettled. It won't be a washout by any means. You know, we did need that rain, though, that's for sure, out there across the province. Let's take a look at what's going to happen, though. So we've got some warm air moving in, especially as we head into the evening hours on, what are we talking about, Wednesday evening there. If we could bring up the graphics if they come up. There they are. And so Wednesday evening, there's those showers there for the northern peninsula, and then that will generally stay unsettled. So what we've got is an area of low pressure that is going to spin these showers. So that means that we're going to see some of the onshore flow, though, along the coast, which is going to keep some of the temperatures a tad cooler than they have been. Looking at a cold front eventually moving in for the western portion of Labrador and towards the north as well. But temperatures on Thursday, 32 degrees for Lab City, and you are looking at some of that humidity as well, 25 in Happy Valley Goose Bay. So most of Labrador will be somewhere into the 20s. Nain will hover around 18 degrees, but along the strait where you're in that onshore flow, you are still going to see those cooler temperatures, 10 to 12 degrees. Now across the island, we're looking at temperatures between 18 to about 23. And again, it'll be generally dry for the northern peninsula and then through parts of central, but we're still going to feel that humidity in the air for the Avalon and the west as we head through to your Thursday. Now, as we look ahead to Thursday evening and into Friday, that area of low pressure is still there, but this cold front is going to sweep through Labrador, and this may actually initiate some strong thunderstorms as we head through the afternoon on Friday. So temperatures will be hovering around 29. Once that cold front moves through, though, temperatures will drop. You're looking between 18 and 27 for the rest of the Labrador, and then the island, you're looking at your temperatures pretty much status quo, not really too much in the way of movement. Now, long-range forecast showing potentially a clear out as we get into Saturday, and then Sunday at this point looks nice with just some cloudy periods and about 23 degrees. The weekend for central Newfoundland will be a tad warmer than that, and then even for the west, a little unsettled for your Saturday, but by Sunday looks lovely. Temperatures hovering around 24 degrees. Now for eastern Labrador, Friday, beautiful. Saturday, things get a bit unsettled. Your temperatures still well into the upper 20s rather, dropping a little bit. There's that cold front moving through down to 19 degrees on Saturday, but back up to 26 by the time we get into Sunday. Now yesterday we talked about the moon, the buck supermoon in Labrador. Keith captured this great shot in Lab West. Thank you very much for that photo. And if you have any photos to send to me, best place, email them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Oh, another great moon shot. Thank you so much for that, Keith. Lovely.
Very nice.
Well, that's it for us. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.
Good night.